Welcome to the Orca Boat Shop, and my name is Rod, and this is episode 5 of building Elfyn, the lap-strake plywood constructed boat. In this episode, I'm going to be looking at installing the keel, the outside stems, and shaping and running some fillets on there. So let's get to it. I started out with hitting the bottom of the hull with the power planer just to try and level it off as best as possible. Then found some high spots, maybe a few low spots, and worked at it with my smoothing plane. Then I'm working my way down on shaping for the outside stems. First again with the hand plane, and then with a spoke shape trying to get it as fair as possible so there's no gaps between the outside stem and the inside stem. The outside stems, which I made way back in episode 1, I suppose, I'm now just running through the thickness planer to get them to the proper thickness to match up with the thickness of the keel. Was able to line up the stems on the full-size patterns and mark where the cut will need to be for the keel to overlap onto the bottom portion of the outside stems. I just did a rough cut on the bandsaw, and I can tune up the rest of it later. First I marked the center line, then I reduced my gauge by 3/8, so I'm going to go 3/8 either side of center. That would leave me with 3/4 of an inch on the face. Fastest way to remove material from the outside stem to get the bevel to match the keel is hitting it with my power planer. And then I just cleaned it up with my bench plane. I keep checking for fitting, looking for any areas that might have a slight gap on the inside edge there, if I can see some light through. If so, I just took my spoke shave and cleaned up a little bit more. It's nice to have a reference mark on the hull and stem itself to make sure I keep putting it back in the same place. I have dry fit the stems, outside stems that is, to the boat, set it in there with bronze screws. I'm going to back them out now and put some thickened epoxy in there, reset the screws. I will leave the keel and the shaping of the bottom area here. May have to pull some of the screws out just so that I don't hit them with the power planer, but it's pretty straightforward now. Now that I'm satisfied with the fit, I just brushed on some unthickened epoxy to let it soak into the end grain of all the wood, both on the stem of the boat itself and the inside face of the outside stem. Then I just slathered on a whole bunch of thickened epoxy with silica and a little bit of wood flour just to match a little bit of color, and then I'm ready to install the outside stems. Getting a lot of good squeeze out there, which I can clean off, and I'm actually going to just leave a little bit of a fillet in the corner there, but just using a simple small popsicle stick.
For a little bit of added protection on the hull, we have the beach runners, or I don't know what you call them, chine guards, whatever. They are mahogany. I've kind of shaped them down a little bit on the ends. I have a little bit more shaping to do. I'm going to dry fit these. They fit primarily between equidistance between station 4 and 5. I've made it a bit longer. Their plans are only calling for 24 inches plus. I got 32 inches. Part of the reason for that is, of course, the curvature of the hull that it needs to pull it down, this way, and then the curve of the strake itself. But I think I can manage. I'm going to drill a hole, glue that, screw that down from inside, and bend this up and hold it in place and put another screw in. So to measure it off, I found the distance of the guard itself. I found the center of the location that I want to do, place it, so that will go right on that line. And then I marked out equidistance of about 7 inches. And then I want to make sure that the screw hits the center. So I marked off sort of half the distance, thickness of that 3/4, 3/8 there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to punch some holes through from the outside to the inside, so I know where those locations are, and then I'll drive the screw in from the inside into the guard itself. Then I'm going to remove them, clean them all up, and glue and screw them on. For the screws, I'm going to use a silicone bronze number 8, and I think these 3/4 will be enough. It'll all depend on sort of how thick the overlap of the planking is, but I don't want to be punching all the way through. And really, I'm kind of using the screw as a temporary clamp to hold this all in place while epoxy sets up. So I think if I go at least halfway into that wood there through the planking, we're going to have enough depth and bite from the threads to hold this in place. Let's set up my drill, and we're just going to go straight through. Now with the mark on the inside, I can go in and do a bit of countersink there for the head of the screw. Hopefully I'm not sitting right on any forms. Okay, you may have noticed I drilled a few extra holes in there. That was not by planning. So when I'm inside the boat, what appears to be a hole really is the holes that I had to hold the boat together and are filled with epoxy, and it looks like daylight in a hole, and I've been drilling through. So now I just have to fill those holes again, because that one is not where it's supposed to be. 1, 2, 3 holes put back in the boat that I had previously filled. Now, to hold this in place whilst I get the screw into there, that's the trick. If I can somehow hold and mark. But I need an extension on the driver. That will make it a little easier. think I now know why it's only suggesting 2 feet. Because that last little bit of curvature there may not be the way to go. I got dust in my ears, my eyes, can't see. I'm gonna have to rest up tomorrow.
After cutting out the keel and cutting the bevel on it, I came to the realization that I was about 6 inches too short. Once I was satisfied with the fit, knowing that the thickened epoxy is going to fill up very small minor gaps, I set a few screws at the bow and the stern just to hold it in location so that I could put it back in the same location when I thickened up my epoxy and glued it on. For the screws to hold the keel on, I'm using a number 10 silicone bronze, I think 2 inches long. It's going to be well counterbored, countersunk, and filled with plugs later. I will leave the screws in. I probably don't need to, but I might as well just leave them in and set the plugs. So with this dry fit, I needed to just sort of determine the curve from the stem through, I guess what you call a 4-foot area there, into the bottom of the keel. We know the keel is supposed to be 1 7/8 inches high, so I made a couple of marks along there from the hull planking up, used a little batten, drew the line. Now I'm just going to take the keel off and cut that line on the bandsaw, and I'll finish tuning it up after it's all glued down. To make sure the keel is perfectly straight down the center line of the boat, I added a couple of nails, dragged a string line down the center of the keel, and I'm just using some weight here to make sure that the keel is being held in the right position, so then I can go under the boat, drill some holes, and set my screws in and suck that keel down to the bottom of the hull. A few taps here and there, making sure the string is right down the center line of the keel, using my weights to hold it in place. Then I just went underneath the boat, crawling about under the pile of lumber under there and all the sawdust. I think I got most of it out of my shirt. So with all the squeeze out, I'm good to just make sure that we've got a small fillet on the keel, and using my chisel stick to clean up all the excess. And whatever's left over, I'm now attaching the beach guards. Now I actually did make the beach guards a bit shorter, more towards the 24 inches recommended in the plans. It was darn near impossible to get it to curve that last little bit through the center line. Now it's time to plug all the holes that are down through the keel with the screws that were set in there. After drilling all my plugs into a nice piece of mahogany, I just cut them off on the bandsaw, and I'm just setting them in with epoxy. Tomorrow when they're hard, I'll just chisel them off, sand everything down, and we are ready for final sanding and get into the next episode, whereby we will start to paint the boat. So thank you very much for watching. And do consider becoming a subscriber. Hey, do me a favor, give this video a like, and we'll see you next time.